Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. You're all very welcome to the Big Book Study, Scottsdale's Big Book Study, where we will study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today is the 14th of December, 2024. My name is Audrey-Anne and I am a recovered compulsive overeater from County Meath in Ireland, and I'm your host for today's study. The co-hosts are Sue L, Tammy M, and Danny. If anyone has any questions during the meeting, please contact myself or any of the co-hosts by private message in the chat function. The chat function will be disabled until 5 minutes before Q&A. And please note that the speaker, Harlan G, will be recorded for the duration of the study. However, the question and answer session which follows will not be recorded. We ask if you can please make sure to keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's study. And please also turn off your video if you are exercising, eating, or if you need to step away from your screen for any reason. During the meeting, we will post the link for our 7 tradition, and this money goes towards the cost of our Zoom account, the cost of uploading the recordings, and we also send contributions to the Intergroup, Arizona Serenity in the Desert, and the World Service Organization. We will post the previous week's recording also in the chat function. And I will now hand you over to Harlan G. Thanks, Harlan.
Thank you very, very much, Audrey. Thank you so much for your service. I really do appreciate it. And I'm so glad you guys are here. Just a couple of housekeeping announcements. If you can, possibly, please, keep your camera on. And the reason that I ask you to do that, if you can, is because it's so much more inviting for people when there's a face instead of this. Just look at where I'm. Very inviting when there's nothing there. So if you could keep your camera on, it really is just so much better. It really is so much better. I'm going to take these off because I really don't need them. Okay, you can hear me still, right? Because it's saying that I don't. Okay, that it's okay. We're going to be. Oh, what else was it? Oh, the birthday, the 17th, 18th, and post some stuff in the chat. And the OA birthday is coming up on the 17th, 18th, and 19th of January. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to hear really good speakers. Everything is very recovery oriented. It is just a fabulous convention, just fabulous. So what I'm going to do is I'm posting some information in the chat that will not only tell you about the birthday and tell you how many different, things we've got going on, and there's going to be an opening speaker and a big book study, and there's going to be meetings on all the steps. It's just going to be great. It's going to take place in Los Angeles, which is the birthplace of OA. OA started in Los Angeles, California on the 19th of January, 1960, and we're going to be together on the 19th of January in 2025 to celebrate the 65th birthday of Overeaters Anonymous. How exciting is that going to be? So if you can make it, it would be so wonderful for you to come. And I posted information in the chat. Okay, we're going to be talking today about sponsorship. Sponsorship. We're going to begin when we start there on page 89. We're going to begin the chapter working with others. But I want to talk a little bit about sponsorship, and pretty much everything I'm going to say is probably going to be repeated today at some point. But I feel like these points need to be made. It's very, very important. Now, it says on page 14 of the Big Book, this is where I want to just begin here. We're going to go to page 89, but just bear with me. Ebby Thatcher impressed some things upon Bill Wilson in the town's hospital when Bill was going through the steps very, very quickly. And on the bottom of 14, I consider this paragraph to have a name. And the name that I give this paragraph is Ebby's Legacy. And Ebby's legacy is one of sponsorship. He didn't always follow it himself, and that's why he struggled. But when I sponsor, and I am sponsored, I find that my life goes so much better, so much better. Why do I need sponsorship? Well, I need a sponsor because I need something I cannot give myself. What is that? Objectivity. Objectivity. I don't have objectivity about the thoughts that are going on in my head. I have an ego. I have opinions that are incorrect. I have all kinds of things going on in my mind that if I were able to divorce myself from those thoughts and ideas and attitudes in my head, I would be much better off, much better off. And my sponsor gives me objectivity. Why do I need to sponsor? Let's go to the bottom of 14 and we'll find out why. My friend, he's talking about Ebby Thatcher. My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. What are the principles? The principles are the steps. You know, you'll hear people say, well, the principle of this is honesty, and the principle of that is this. And that's not what Bill is referring to. That is stuff that came out decades after Bill Wilson was dead. Decades. That came out, you know, the principle of this is truth. And the principle that came out in the 80s or the 90s. Bill died in 71. When he talks about the principles, he is talking about the steps. Bill was taught in writing school. He went to night school to learn how to write. And they taught him not to keep using the same word over and over again. You know, you know, you know, you know. Like. You hear people do that all the time. It's hard to listen to, but it's also hard to read. It's hard to read it that way. So he uses the word principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative. What does imperative mean? Imperative means important above all else. Important above all else. What is so imperative? To work with others as he had worked with me. So what Ebby is teaching Bill is, as Ebby was Bill's sponsor, and Bill always said throughout, whether Ebby was drunk or sober, Bill always said to the world that Ebby is my sponsor, and Ebby remained Bill's sponsor throughout his life, whether Ebby was drinking or not, because he always felt bad that Ebby felt bad that he didn't get all this juice that this doctor in Akron was getting. He's the one that brought Bill Wilson the message, not Dr. Bob. And so he always felt bad, but he always went out of his way to identify Ebby as his sponsor. Did Bill Wilson really have a sponsor that was in and out of drinking? Not really. But he had other people that he leaned on for objectivity. And what the job of the sponsor is to put the hand of the sponsee in the hand of God. That is the most important job we have. But let's continue, because this is important stuff. It's imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said. And how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life, how do I do that? Well, the big book's going to tell you, through work and self-sacrifice for others, sponsorship. He could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Life is going to get lifey. Here's a lie I was told as a child: lose weight and everything will be okay. I found that to be a lie. I found that to be the one of the biggest lies I've ever been told in my entire life. Lose weight and everything will be okay. Not for me, and I doubt for you. All the changes is you weigh less and you look better and you're healthier, yes, but the world goes on as it has gone on for centuries, and not anybody losing weight is going to change what people say, do, think, and how they act. Through work and self sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials. Notice the word certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, if he did not sponsor, he would surely drink again. Make note of that. I'm going to read that sentence again. It's very important. Let's cover it again. If he did not work, sponsor, he would surely drink again. And if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. What is that paragraph telling me? Sponsor or die in the food. Now, I hear people all the time that don't want to sponsor. They're letting themselves say, I'm going to work an 11-step program rather than 12. What else are you not willing to do? Because dangerously, dangerously, dangerously close to the world is this idea that this is a 12-step program, not an 11-step program. It is not a 11-step program. It is a 12-step program. Okay. So this is extremely important. So sponsorship from the standpoint of the sponsor and the standpoint of the sponsee are vital to my recovery. Once again, what is my sponsor providing me? Do I need his help as to how to say the 7-step prayer? No. Do I need his help as to how to do step 11? No. No, I don't need his help to do step 10. What I need my sponsor's help for is I need his objectivity. Once again, at the risk of repeating, I have ideas in my head that are incorrect. I have attitudes in my head that not only are they incorrect, they are destructive to my life. They will destroy me. And I pick them up usually out of anger or fear. And so if I allow myself to just be in my head, I will never be able to stay out of the food for very long. And I will have a lousy life because I will never grow to my full potential. And my sponsor and the people whom I do outreach with provide me with that objectivity that says to me, Harlan, your idea about this subject or your idea about that subject are incorrect. And sometimes I get angry and sometimes I get scared, more often scared, that if I am correct about this, what else am I incorrect about? And don't worry, they'll tell me. They'll tell me. But to sponsor is extremely important because every person that I sponsor is my professor. They are my professors. They teach me more than I could ever teach them. You know, when I was young and eating my head off, I believed that the behaviors, the thoughts, the attitudes that I held so dear were secret and unique unto me. I believed that I was the only person on earth who thought about eating someone else's French fries from their table. They had left, and I was walking through the restaurant on my way out and noticed that the busboy hadn't picked up the French fries and the piece of hamburger yet, and I wanted to go over and snarf them down. I believed that I might be the only person in the world who thought about that stuff. And I found out that I'm not. I found out that the fears that I have about the world and the insecurities that I have about relationships and the world and finances and the future and the unknown, I found out I am not the only person in the world that has these fears. I found out that when you scratch any of us, you find all of us because we are, with some subtle differences, we are the same person. So much the same and not very different at all. Oh, maybe there's a different name. Maybe you're a different religion. Maybe you're a different race. Maybe you're a different creed or nationality. But when you boil the meat from the bone, what I found out in my 45-year travel through OA is that by communicating these fears, these things, I find more the same than I do different from any of you. Many of you are very different than me on the outside, but you're not very different from me on the inside. Very important for me to remember. And what are the two things that people fear the most in sponsorship? Why they won't sponsor? I have a friend of mine in New Jersey, Kim. And you know what Kim says? She says, "Are you afraid to sponsor?" She says, "You better be afraid not to sponsor because if you don't sponsor, you will not recover." Should I say that again? If you don't sponsor, you will not recover because you are not working a 12-step program. And that is what you want to work, isn't it? If you I don't assume you'd come here if you didn't. What are the two things that keep people from sponsorship? Number one, they don't really know to let the big book do the heavy lifting. They want to sponsor, they want to mold a sponsorship to each person that they sponsor. You don't have to do that. The big book does the heavy lifting. When I bring people through the doctor's opinion, Bill's story, there is a solution, or excuse, yeah, there is a solution and more about alcoholism. That is step one. The doctor's opinion, Bill's story, there is a solution, and more about alcoholism is all dedicated to step one. There are more pages dedicated to step one than in all the other steps. When I'm talking about step two, the history of step two is in Bill's story, there's no question. But when I bring them through We Agnostics, we are going to find that there are two sentences in that chapter that summarize the entire operation. Number one, the main object of this book is to help you find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And if that's the main object of the book, that better be the main object of my life, shouldn't it? Now, there's another sentence that sums up step two beautifully. Do I believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? Do you believe, or are you willing to believe that there is a power greater than yourself? I don't have to know every little detail of each chapter yet. I don't even have to know them ever. I've got the rest of my life to learn those things by going to big book meetings and sponsoring and reading and listening to podcasts and doing all these things. I'm going to be going to meetings where this stuff is going to be discussed for the rest of my life. But if I come out of chapter 4 with just this knowledge, I've come out okay. At least it makes a beginning. The main object of this book is to help you find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And do you believe, or are you even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than yourself? Very important. Chapter 5, how it works, are the two most misunderstood steps, 3 and 4. And chapter 6 is steps 5 through 11. And chapter 7, 8, and 9 are about step 12. Let's go to page 89. Let's go to page 89. Oh, the other thing, I didn't get to it. The first thing that people have when they avert to be sponsors is they want to, they don't know how to structure it. And so we do that by letting the big book do the heavy lifting. If you've got other ways to sponsor, maybe you're an aficionado of the OA literature. Maybe you're an aficionado of some other thing. You know, there's all kinds of programs where there's lots of written assignments and things. They're not wrong. If that's what works for you, do that. And you know, people will come to you. I let the big book do the heavy lifting. I'm very old-fashioned that way, and I sponsor just right out of the big book. If you have some other way of getting them through the steps, God bless you. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying we should, you know, put you in a stockade. If it works for you, God bless you. And the other thing about people that are very scary for them is they want to do it perfectly. If they can't do it perfectly, they don't want to do it at all. And I'm going to let you in on a secret. As human beings, we are all fallible and none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. And if I can't do it perfectly, I don't want to do it at all. There's a big part of me that suffers from that. If I can't be the best, I don't want to play. And I have been plagued by that my whole life. When I was a kid, you hear me joke about I don't want any math questions. But when I got into algebra as a freshman at Mather High School in Chicago, I was afraid I wouldn't understand any of this. So my brain shut down and I said, well, if I'm not going to get an A or I'm not going to do good, I'm just going to flunk and do bad. I didn't get an F at the end, but I got a D, which is terrible. But my brain, I always have to battle this. My brain says, if I can't be the best, I don't want to play. So I have to forge through that. I have to, and I need God's help for that. I'm not the best sponsor in the world, far from it, but I do my best. And the sponsor has to be the adult in the room. The third thing about sponsorship that we all have to work on is I'm afraid to sponsor because I'm afraid they won't like me. Well, let me let you in on a secret. There are people in OA and probably out of OA too that think I'm a horse's behind. They don't like that I'm direct. They don't like the way I talk to people. They don't like the answers I give to questions. They don't like the cut of my jib, whatever that may be. I'm going to be upstairs tonight sleeping like a baby because I would rather say something that you're not going to like me and you be alive than me mollycoddle your disease and try to figure things out so that you'll like me and you're gaining weight in leaps and bounds. I have to be, as a sponsor, I have to be the adult in the room. And that is so hard for some of us, but you have to learn it. They're coming to you, they're broken, and they're beaten down by this disease, and we want to turn control of the sponsor-sponsee relationship to the sickest of the sick, the compulsive overeater who's still eating. We want to turn this over to them, and boy, oh boy, that shouldn't be done. That is just not a good idea. So on an everyday basis, I have to tell people things they don't want to hear. We have a Scottsdale meeting Sunday through Friday, and I do a Q&A at the end of the meeting. And frequently, I have to tell people things they do not want to hear. I have to answer their question in a way that says, no, I'm sorry, your way isn't going to work. And they get mad at me. Sometimes they'll fire me off an email or they'll fire off a text. I don't like the way you said this. I don't like the way you said that. I have to watch the way I say something. Yes, I have to use I sentences more than you sentences. That's very important. But I just can't say, no, it's okay to keep eating through your ninth step or through whatever. No, you don't use the steps to get abstinent. You have to put the food down first. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. And there's a multitude of other things they don't want to hear that I have to tell them. And I'm not the only one that has to tell them that. And one day you're going to have to tell people things they don't want to hear. And it's going to be okay. You're going to survive. I'm imperfect. I sponsor. I want people to like me. I sponsor. I'm sometimes confused and I sponsor. And if I can do it, you can do it. And we are here to help not only the newcomer, we are here to help the sponsors too. Sometimes we can have a powwow. Sometimes people will have questions and say, well, my sponsee she's dyslexic and she likes to stand on her head and she likes to do her knitting at that time. What do I do? Well, at some point you have to make a decision as a sponsor and a sponsee that this is the most important thing in your life without exception. You have to come to that conclusion, don't you? I know I did because I have no life without this program. I own a business. I will not have a business because I can't rely on myself if I'm in the food. I'm in a relationship. I can't rely on myself if I'm in the food. I have friends. I can't be a friend to my friends if I'm in the food. I have responsibilities in life. I can't own those responsibilities if I'm in the food. I have a responsibility to God, and I can't be a servant of God's when I'm in the food. I can't do it. So let's get to page 89 with no further ado. And we're going to get to the promise of the program. It supersedes all promises. It supersedes everything. Any promise you've ever been made, we're going to talk about that promise today. Go to page 89, working with others. Working with others. The Yiddish word for help sounds almost like English. It's helfen. Helfen is the Yiddish word for help. My father would say helfen mir means help me, and that would usually mean there was a big snowstorm and I had to help him dig the car out. But he'd get up and say helfen mir means help me, help me. Yeah, my dad was a character, but yeah. Okay, anyway, working with others. Practical experience I'm on page 89. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Let's stop right there. That is the promise of promises. Forget everything else you've been told. This promise is at the top. The flagpole doesn't have anything higher than this. God is telling you through this book that if you will work with others, you will help others, that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Didn't you come here for immunity? Didn't you come here not because you didn't want to eat, but because you didn't want to eat? Didn't you pray when you were a child? I don't know if you're anything like me. I prayed to God as a child to relieve me of the urge that I have to eat every cookie in America, every cupcake in America. I don't want to eat that stuff. And if I didn't want to eat it, I would have a great life. And I'll let you in on a secret. I don't want to eat that, and I do have a very good life. God's promise is that if I work with others, I will have immunity from drinking as long as I work intensively with other alcoholics. I sponsor too many men. I help anybody that I can. Why do I do that? Why? Because I don't want to die in the food. Now, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. Death is inevitable, death and taxes, right? Benjamin Franklin wrote that in a letter back in, I believe it was 1780 or something like that. He wrote a letter and he says, there is nothing as certain as death and taxes. Well, it's not that I'm going to die. That's okay. There's nothing I can do about it. Here's what I want, and this is why I sponsor and am sponsored. I want to live the fullest life I can while I'm here. I want to live until I die. When I was a little boy, you've heard me say this a million times. When I was a little boy, my father had a lot of friends. He was a very likable guy. And most of his friends, not all of them, but most of them came out of the concentration camps and something called a DP camp. A lot of people don't know what a DP camp is. DP camp stands for displaced person. People that were displaced at the end of World War II went into a DP camp. Now, a DP camp had food and medical care and rabbis and priests and ministers and comfortable beds. It wasn't a concentration camp, although the word camp was in there. It was a DP. People would get married in there because they'd lost everything, and there's marriages that occurred in there too. But the bottom line is my dad's friends who were in concentration camps, the most horrid, the biggest crime against humanity ever perpetrated was the Holocaust. But the bottom line is they would say to me the same thing, live until you die. And for a long time, I didn't want to live. I didn't care about all your promises of a better life. I knew I couldn't stop eating Oreo cookies. I didn't want to live. You take your world and you shove it because I don't belong here. Love is not coming my way. Wealth is not coming my way. Fame and fortune are not coming my way. Happiness is not coming my way. So why do you keep telling me I should want to live when I want to die so desperately? What happened to me along the way is a funny thing happened to me on my way to the grave. I want to live. And the only way I know to live the fullest possible life imaginable is to grasp this book and grasp these steps and help other people to the best of my ability. I have to get out of myself if I'm going to live a full life. I cannot keep saying and doing the same self-centered things and think I'm going to have a good life. It just doesn't work that way. Let's go back to page 89. It works when other activities fail. Now, is there a substitution for sponsorship? No. I want to be very clear. If you're the head of the retreat committee, or you're the secretary of the meeting, or you're the chairman of the meeting, or whatever it is you are, that is not a substitute for sponsorship. It is not, and it never will be. Let's keep going. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. Does that mean we carry it to non-alcoholics? Not according to my book. We concentrate on alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. How is it that you're qualified? How is it that you have the key to a better life? Because if you have experienced recovery and you have experienced this disease, you speak and understand the language of the heart. You can communicate in ways no one else can. I have been shouted at, screamed at, hit, punched, kicked, humiliated by people who were well-intentioned, who wanted me to wake up and lose weight. That if I would just lose weight, everything would be okay. And they have been inhumane toward me at times. Inhumane in their treatment of me. And then one day in 1979, on a freezing cold, icy February night, February 2nd, 1979, I went to my very first meeting of Overeaters Anonymous. And there were people there. I didn't notice it the first day. I didn't even notice it the first 2 months, 3 months. But there were people there when my ego was reduced enough to hear them. There were people there who were older than me and thinner than me. But if I shut my mouth and closed down my ego and I opened up my ears and I listened to them, they told my story. Because the thoughts that I had about food and the behaviors that I had around food and the behaviors that I had around money and life and different things were not secret unto me, and that I had nothing to be ashamed of because we were all in this together. We were all in this together. And then what happened was it started a bridge, because I always saw myself on the other side of a chasm, the exception to every rule, because the ego has 3 jobs: make me right, make me feel good right now, make me different from everybody else. One day a bridge was built between where I stood shivering in the food and where they sat warm and protected. And then another lifeline came, and another lifeline came, so that today I have a super highway between where I stand in isolation, shivering in the Oreo cookies, crapping in my pants, pissing in my pants, all alone, not feeling very well, not able to get in and out of a car, not able to walk, not able to function, and where they have, now I have a super highway. I call it the God Highway. I call it the God Highway. In Chicago, we have I-94, and we have I-90, and we have Route 41, and we have Route 53, and we have all these various highways, 80, 88, whatever we have in Chicago. The main one that I always used was 41 and 94. Those are the ones I used when I was younger in Chicago. I call this one Highway 12, even though we have a Route 12 in Chicago. I think it's Milwaukee Avenue or something. But anyway, doesn't matter. This is Highway 12. And Highway 12 has no traffic on it at all. And I'm able to go as fast as I want to between where I am and where God is and where you are. Let's continue, page 89. Life will take on new meaning. For those, my sponsees call me every day, and I call my sponsor every single day. Now, if once a week works for you or once every few days works for you, I'm not here to judge you. That wouldn't work for me. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It would not work for me. Every single day that ends in a Y is a day that I wake up a compulsive overeater. I'm much more fear-based than anger-based. But because I get scared of the unknown, the untested, I get scared of how people are going to think of me or what this one, that one's going to do, whatever it is. I need that daily contact with a sponsor. Even if all I get is his answering machine and we don't hook up that day, and that does happen from time to time, at least I know I tried. My sponsees call me. Do they talk to me for 10 hours and interrupt my whole life? No. It's a quick, unless they're going through the steps. I mean, if they're going through the steps, then it's longer. But once they get through and they're sponsoring, it's a quick phone call. It's maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes. What are you going to do for yourself today? What are you going to do for others? What are you grateful for? And on occasion, what is it you don't want to tell me? What are you hiding that you don't want to tell me? And we don't, it's a very quick kind of conversation. I'm not telling you how to sponsor. I'm not telling you how to be sponsored. I'm sharing with you what works for me. Let's go back to page 89. Life will take on new meaning. Now I have to think about other people. That's a novel idea for this ego-driven maniac. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch the loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up around you, about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. Not long ago, somebody imparted some wisdom on me that I want to pass to you this morning. They said, if you want to live longer, not just better, longer, there's 3 things you can do to live longer. Number 1, eat less. Number 2, move more. And number 3, surround yourself with positive people. I love my friends. My friends are very, very special and precious to me. I have a dear friend who is suffering. He just had a heart attack. I think about this every single day. It's hard sometimes for me not to think about it because I don't want to lose him. And I have other friends. Some have respiratory illnesses, and some are in their 90s, and some are whatever they are, and some of them are a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs sometimes. You know, that happens. I'm sure they think the same about me. And I have other things that occupy my heart and mind. But one of the things that I take such joy in, I never knew I could be this happy, is to watch somebody walk in the room. You can tell I spent most of my life in live meetings. You know, somebody walk in the room, skeptical as all get out, eating, negative, horribly angry, and just negative energy just flowing from that person. And all of a sudden, something happens. Bang! And they're sponsoring. And they're great guns into the program. What a miracle. Oh my God. I have a friend of mine. I actually have several friends of mine in OA that when we get to Los Angeles in January, they revel in going to the beach in Los Angeles. They love to go to the beach. It's a little cold for me out there, and I can't sit on the sand. I could sit on the sand, but I can't get up. I could never get up from there. And they go to the beach, you know, and they come back. What a miracle. We saw the sun come up. We saw this, and we saw the water, and we saw that's all great stuff. I'm not knocking that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. I define a miracle as something that has no logical or scientific explanation. You know where the greatest miracles are at that convention or any retreat or any meeting or any gathering? The greatest miracle of them all are compulsive overeaters born with a penchant of the mind, a twist of the mind to eat food that will kill them, and a body that has an allergic reaction which will prevent them from limiting the food that they eat because it will set them up with an actual physical craving for more of the same. And they are predetermined biologically to eat themselves to death at an early age after much, much, much suffering and humiliation. Not eating, not doing those things, and they are happy in their release. This is the greatest miracle I have ever seen. And 30 years ago today at 4:27 p.m., I watched my daughter be born, and I cut the umbilical cord. She was yellow as hell. Man, was she jaundiced. She looked like a pumpkin. She was just yellow orange as all hell. And she had a thick head of black hair. I don't know where she got that. I used to have black hair, but when I was a little boy, I had black hair just like she did. and she looks just like me. And I hope she's happy because our relationship is very frayed. Now, other than that, I have never seen a miracle that could even compare to the enthusiasm and the joy and the mitzvah of recovery. Mitzvah means a good deed or a commandment of recovery. It is such a joy to behold. I miss live meetings. I do. There's things about live meetings that I do definitely miss, and I miss. Um, I cut my teeth at the Lieberman Center in Skokie and Swedish Covenant Hospital in Chicago and all kinds of places in and around Chicago and Skokie and Lincolnwood and all those places that we had meetings for. I miss them. I truly do. And to see people coming in so broken and they're passing this to other people, don't miss that. Don't miss that. Oh, what a shame if you miss it. If you're not quite there yet, you're not quite at step 12, you just keep working because you'll be there soon enough. And to enjoy that miracle is something to behold. Let's continue, page 89. Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. There's a qualifier for you. We all know people who maybe need this program, but this is not a program for people who need it. It's not a program for people who want it. It's a program for people who do it. And I can't make you do it. I'm a good sponsor, but I'm not a miracle worker. I can't make you do something you don't want to do, can I? I can't do it. I can't do it. So you have to want this. And how do you demonstrate you want this? You take action. You don't demonstrate you want this by showing me that your pants don't fit. You don't demonstrate that you want this because you bring me information about your diabetes or your heart attack or the fact that you have blockages in your heart or the fact that you're an insulin dependent diabetic. You demonstrate that you want this program by doing it. It's an action program. Let's continue. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim. Page 90. Before we move on, let's just remind ourselves that the world is a little different place today because of HIPAA. And HIPAA prevents institutions from releasing medical information on their patients. I cannot call up a doctor or a hospital like Dr. Bob and Bill did and ask them, do you have any compulsive overeaters? Do you have any bariatric patients who are north of, say, 400 pounds, 500 pounds that I could come talk to? They cannot release that information any longer. But you don't have to be in that scenario. Recently, yesterday, I heard this. I think it was yesterday. Was yesterday Friday? Yeah, I heard this on the news. My favorite news station is here in Phoenix, and they had a statistic that was not surprising but startling. They said that 20% of all children 0 to 20 years of age, 20% of them are obese. And of the 20% that are obese, 5% are morbidly or in the extreme obese category. And of adults 20 to infinity, 60% of adults are obese. Now, are all obese people compulsive overeaters? No. No, they're not. No. But there are enough of them so that we should be the largest of the 12-step groups. Alcoholism pales in comparison to compulsive overeating, but they are much larger than us because it's a little different in terms of accountability. That's the reason. And they have advantages on us. They have nudged by the judge, and they have the treatment centers that are pumping hundreds of thousands of people every day into AA and NA. We don't have that. And the reason we don't have it specifically is this. We had treatment centers in Chicago. We had Rader Institute and we had Parkside. And I used to go to meetings where it would be 200, 225, 250 people. There is a dining room in Swedish Covenant Hospital on the north side of Chicago. We used to do an AA 12 and 12 meeting. We used to do an AA 12 and 12 meeting. Here's my AA 12 and 12 right here. This is the one I used to bring to those meetings right here. This is the same book that I had 30, 40 some years ago. And we used to have, this is it right here. And we used to have meetings at Swedish Covenant where we would break up into discussion groups of 10. And frequently there'd be 20, 25 discussion groups of 10. So you can do the math yourself. Well, the insurance companies pulled the funding because they were getting recovery in AA. And I'm not knocking or diminishing the nightmare of alcoholism. I'm not diminishing the nightmare of drug addiction. I'm not. And there are people who are here that have suffered tremendous losses of loved ones or because of alcoholism and drug addiction. I'm not minimizing that. I'm not marginalizing that at all. I'm just saying that the accountability here is so different. I have to weigh myself. I have to weigh and measure my starches, my proteins. And as I get older, I have to eat less food. So I have to go and get a food plan. I'm 70 years old. I'm going to be 71 this year, hopefully. I'll be 71. If I ate the way I ate 2-3 years ago, I'd be gaining weight in leaps and bounds. Leaps and bounds, I'd be gaining weight. So the accountability here is different. With alcohol and drugs, there is a cessation of ingestion. The cessation is very clear. It's very black and white. This has alcohol, you don't use it. This has drugs or whatever it is, cocaine, heroin, marijuana, whatever it is, you don't use it. It's very cut and dry, and it never changes. It never changes. So the accountability here is a bit different. Where was I going with that? Oh, so the bottom line is it is a little tougher to sometimes navigate that stuff. Okay, let's go to page 90. Oh, wait a minute. Was there something else I wanted to say? Oh, you can be useful. I forgot to. You speak and understand the language of the heart. You are the only group of people that speak it. And what Dr. Silkworth taught us is, in order for the message to be carried, it must have depth and weight. And the only way to give it depth and weight is to have experienced the hell of the illness and the heavenly warmth of the recovery. We have been touched, we who are in recovery have been touched by God because we took action after action after action after action that we did not at first believe in, that we were skeptical about, but we kept taking that action through lack of options. We had tried everything else, and now we submitted to this. And when we started taking these actions and we crawled to God, He ran to us. When we walked to God, He ran to us. And when He ran to us, He never came empty-handed. He brought with Him miracles beyond the human being's imagination. I have a good life. I have a good life. I wish certain things about my life were different. I wish I could retire. I wish certain other things were a bit different. But here's what I can tell you. I have friends who are very, very wealthy. I wouldn't trade my life for theirs for 80 bars of gold. I would not do it. I have a good life. I walk 3 miles a day, 6 days a week. My bills are paid. I own my house. I own a car that runs. I have clothes on my back. And by the way, every garment on my body came from a normal store. I didn't have to go to Ed's Elephant Wear or Fred's Hippo Wear to get this shirt. I'm wearing shorts that were given to me by the most wonderful girlfriend you ever saw. She's great, she's beautiful, she's kind, and she gave me these shorts that I'm wearing today. Um, and I have this t-shirt that came, it's a Ducks t-shirt, Oregon Ducks, but I got this shirt at a normal place. I didn't have to go to Ed's Elephant Wear to get this. So this is something that is a miracle. When I get in my car, I have a little bit of a limitation because I have false knees and false hips, but I can get in my car, I can get out of my car, and I'm not when I get in and out of the car. I don't have to do that. The reason I don't have to do that is because there is a God and it's not me. The reason I don't have to do that is there is a way of life that will bring miracles that are beyond my wildest imagination right to me without all that much effort. And what are they asking me to do? They're asking me to sponsor other people because I cannot keep something here that I don't give away. They're not asking me to clean the toilets at Sky Harbor Airport. They're not asking me to sweep the floor at O'Hare Airport. They're not asking me to dig ditches. They're asking me to give of myself. Is that so hard? And I let the big book do the heavy lifting. We're going to see miracles beyond our wildest dreams if we just continue on this path. And the greatest miracle that you will see is that you yourself will find yourself in places that only God can put you. You could never have gotten there on your own by yourself. You never could have gotten there. And that's where I find myself today. I find myself peaceful. I wake up in the morning. I'm not guilt ridden that I ate Doritos. I'm not shame ridden that I was walking through the store and maybe someone saw me and I was buying food that I shouldn't be eating. I didn't go anywhere I shouldn't be. I didn't say anything I shouldn't say. I don't have that albatross around my neck. What a beautiful, beautiful way of life. In the next few weeks, as we go through this chapter, we are going to examine some of the more specific instructions on how to sponsor and how not to sponsor, who to sponsor and who not to sponsor. We're going to be going through that, and I hope sincerely that you will stay with me on that journey so that together we can get through this chapter and we can get through the next one and the next one, and then we'll start over again. But this is a fabulous chapter, and this is a very important concept. Just to review before we go to Q&A, the three things I see people letting get in their way from sponsorship. A, I want to do it perfectly. B, I don't exactly know how to do it. And C, I want everybody to like me. And I'm deathly afraid that I'm going to say something to somebody and they're not going to like me. Don't be afraid. God is with you every step of the way. And, the bottom line is nobody's perfect. Nobody has all the answers. And in order to make an omelet, you're going to have to break a few eggs. And that is just the way that this world is situated. Before I let you go and before we pass to Q&A, I'm going to encourage all of you again, and I see so many of you doing it. I want to thank you for keeping your cameras open because it's infinitely more inviting to people when your camera is open, and I see so many of you doing it. I want to thank you. I hope that you will have the thought that you want to come to LA. I didn't used to drool. Now I'm 70 years old. I drool when I talk. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish I could go back and be 10 again. But okay, I'll embrace being 70. It's all right. It's okay. And I hope that you will do that, and I hope to see you in LA. Okay, let's transition to Q&A.